Hello everyone! I probably look like a new face to a whole lot of you, especially if you've been tuning in weekly. And that is because I am an intern with the Museum of Ontario Archaeology. My name is Jessica Chernick, and I went to school at the University of Western Ontario for public history, but I'm actually not in Ontario right now, in my backyard in the state of Pennsylvania in the United States. So the scene behind me might look a little unfamiliar to a lot of you, but that's why. I'm actually somewhere totally different. So pretty much the resources we're going to be talking about are pretty much the same between here and up in Ontario. But I decided to take a little bit different route for this video. We've been talking a lot about amphibians and snakes and reptiles and all kinds of things like that. But I figured maybe it's a good time to hop on over to the plants and just check on and see what they're up to. And we'll definitely still be talking about animals. We can't leave them behind. So we'll be switching back and forth, and you'll hear a little bit about maybe both of them or one or the other. But to get started with today's video, I'm going to be talking a little about invasive species. We're going to talk about two plants, and one bug. Now, you're probably wondering what an invasive species is. You probably heard a lot about them, maybe recently, maybe you already know a whole lot about them. Now, invasive species can be an animal, a plant, an insect, even microorganisms that might affect plants, things like that aren't native to an area. So they come from somewhere else and are brought over either from humans or animals or some way. And they establish themselves. And what makes them invasive, because some plants, they're not native here. Dandelions, for example, they're actually from Asia and Europe, and they were brought over here for a food source when settlers were coming. So they're not actually from North America, but they're not causing any damage. What makes a plant invasive is when it is causing some sort of damage. So whether it's environmental, or it's affecting the economy in some way, or it's affecting our health as humans. So it's not good for us. Dandelions, they might be annoying, but they're not really causing any sort of damage to anybody. So it's pretty much like if a bug comes over here and eats all of your tomato plants, and the bug isn't from here, now all of a sudden you don't have as many tomato plants. So we want to make sure we keep them in check, and we know exactly what these guys look like, so we can keep an eye on them. So the first plant I'm going to talk about is something called garlic mustard. So garlic mustard is actually from Europe, and it was brought over into North America in the early 1800s as an herb, so people would actually be able to eat it, just like basil or oregano. But now it has spread out all over the place, and we can find it in southern and eastern Ontario, and also parts of Quebec. Now, luckily, or unluckily for most of it, I actually have some of it growing in my backyard, and just so you guys can see what it looks like a little bit easier, it likes to grow in damp, shady areas, so with all the rain we've been getting, and we have these woods right behind us here, so it's not getting a whole lot of sun, we do have a good amount of this. Now you can also see the leaves are kind of triangular or heart-shaped, just like if you draw it on a little card, just like that. And then they also have these tiny little white flowers at the top here, which they don't look too bad. They're kind of pretty. But another thing kind of unique about it is if you crush one of the leaves and you really crush it really well, and then you sniff it, it actually smells like garlic, which is one reason that it actually got its name, and kind of one reason that makes it edible. Now, probably doesn't look too bad. I mean, it has these nice flowers on it. It's okay. But what makes it dangerous is if you imagine like how a dandelion produces all of its seeds, it has hundreds of them. This guy produces thousands of them. And for that reason, he's able to spread out really far, really fast, and just make a whole lot of new plants really easily. And then on top of that, no animals want to eat this. So white-tailed deer, they don't like the taste. They say, we don't want to eat that. And so they'll eat something else. So these guys kind of go unchecked. There's nothing really eating them and taking them down so that they're not producing as much. And because of that, they take over forests really easily. So if I don't get back there and pull these guys out and get rid of them safely, we might not have as many nice little wildflowers back there as we do. So maybe I should get on that. So the next plant we're going to talk about is gout weed. Now, gout weed is kind of similar to garlic mustard in that it began in Europe and northern Asia, and then it was brought over to North America by early settlers as an ornamental garden plant. And now these people, they probably weren't thinking it's something familiar and pretty. They're going to a totally new place, so something familiar probably makes them feel better and not as homesick. Now, because it spread so much, it's now found all over Canada and all over the US, which obviously we don't want. We'd like something ornamental, just kind of contain itself. Now, I don't have any of it back there, which is a really good thing, so I can't show you exactly what it looks like, but from the picture, and we'll pop them up again so you can see, it's found in forests with disturbed soil, so it needs shade, but it also needs soil that's been kicked up. And that can be from logging operations all the way to people hiking and kicking up dirt, whether they know it or not. And its leaves are green or green and white. It might have both colors on it. It has little clusters of white flowers, kind of similar to the garlic mustard, except these little stems here, they're a lot longer, and they have a whole lot more flowers kind of bunched up on top there. So it looks kind of just like a normal wildflower you'd find anywhere. But what makes this guy a super duper spreader is not only does he produce seeds, he also spreads using roots similar to how grass spreads. So if you plant some seeds of grass and you kind of just let it go, it will eventually spread out on its own. This stuff does the same thing and it spreads out. So if it has those roots and they're working well, which they are, and it has the seeds and it's able to spread using the seeds in the soil, it's going to go. And because of that, it really takes over entire forests really, really quickly. And because it's able to take over forests, and because it's a ground covering, excuse me, my papers are flying all over the place here. The leaves are able to block out all of the sun from reaching the soil. So things like wildflowers, they can't grow, and if tree seed falls, it's not able to grow either because it's not able to grow tall enough to get that sun, so that the gout weed isn't the only thing growing. So it's not great either. And the last invasive species I'm going to talk about is a little insect called the emerald ash borer. Now, the emerald ash borer started in Asia, and that's where he belongs, but unfortunately, he managed to get over here in Ontario, I should say, in 2002, and he's also found in Quebec, probably from a wood shipment, and they managed to reproduce over here. Now, they're really, really tiny, and insects are pretty hard to keep an eye on because it's not something that, like, doesn't move like a plant. You can see where the plant is, and you can physically get rid of it. But the insects kind of obviously fly away. It's going to be really hard to see them. So these guys are even more difficult to see because they're really tiny. They're about the size of a penny. If you can picture about what that is, if you put a penny and then put this guy on top, he's going to be about that size. But he's also like kind of pretty too. They have, and you know what beetles, of course, they have their wings and then their bodies underneath the wings, so when they fly, a different part is shown. The wings are a nice emerald green color, and the bodies are variation of different colors. They could be bronze or golden or reddish green bodies, but pretty much the entire insect is kind of this mirrored, maybe wheat, shimmery sort of color. Now they might look pretty, but they're really, really dangerous, and it's because of their name, emerald ash borer. The emerald part just makes it sound nice and colorful, but the ash borer part is what we really have to be worried about. And that pretty much means that both the adults and the larvae, their little baby wormies, eat ash trees. So the larvae, little babies, they will burrow into the tree, and they will eat the part of the tree that circulates the food around the tree. So when it rains and the nutrients in the soil are sucked up by the roots and it's spread all around the tree, so it's able to grow leaves and produce oxygen and consume CO2 and all that stuff, they actually eat that part. So that's really not good at all. And especially if there's a whole lot of them, the tree's losing all of that important inside part that circulates that food. And while the babies are eating the inside of the tree, the adults are going after the leaves. Now, a lot of insects, they eat the leaves of the trees, which, usually isn't a big deal. But if there's a lot of these on a tree at one time, they can do a lot of damage. And on top of it, with the babies, it's not good for the tree. So if it's a big infestation, unfortunately, a lot of the ash trees will not survive. It's almost a 100% mortality rate, pretty much. So it will lose its leaves, it'll die. So we really want to keep these guys in check too, just as much as we want to keep plants in check. Now, it sounds kind of scary, I know, invasive species, like, oh my gosh, they can do all this stuff to our environment and get rid of wildflowers and get rid of trees that we're used to seeing. But there are ways to keep them in check, even if, like, nature isn't doing it, so like animals and things. So for plants like the garlic mustard, you can pull it out. It's pretty easy to pull out. I mean, I pretty much got its entire root system when I tugged this guy out. So if you don't have a whole lot of them somewhere, pretty easy to pull out. But things, when you have a whole lot of them in an area, it's going to be pretty hard to just pull them out on your own. So that's where maybe you might use chemicals, which you should really only use if you know what you're doing. Maybe it's better to just call on a professional to try to do it, because they are trained to be able to use them. And you also have to be careful when you use them. So because there's wildflowers that are trying to grow, you don't want to damage the wildflowers, and you probably need to use a specific type of poison to be able to get rid of them. And the same thing goes for insects. It's a little bit easier to physically control them, short of just knowing that they exist, which is pretty much step one. It's easier to use a chemical on them, so a sort of insecticide, something that's going to, again, control the population, even if it doesn't get rid of them entirely. So trees, I know, are actually getting injections of a chemical that's able to prevent the little baby wormies from living inside of the tree and eating all of the good stuff that it needs to survive. And the adults, it's the same way. It prevents them from landing on it, eating the leaves, and being able to just do that anytime they really want to. So that's pretty much the easiest ways of control. But just knowing that they exist, that's good enough for most times. So that pretty much is it for the information part of it. So we're going to head inside, or I'm going to head inside. I don't know where you guys are. I'm going to head inside and get a little bit of a craft ready. It'll be really easy, and I'll walk you guys through it. Alright, so we are back inside here, and for our craft, I thought it would be pretty fun to make a little invasive species guidebook so that we can keep track of when we see the little critters and know what they look like, and some fun facts that we'll be able to share with our family and friends whenever we go on a hike, or maybe people are just talking about them at some point. So that way we'll be able to share any information that we found. So to make our little book, the first step we're going to do is we're going to have to fold our paper. So all you need for this is one sheet of paper, and you're going to want to grab a pair of trusty scissors there. So we're going to fold our paper in half. I'm going to fold it, what is it, maybe the short way. Make sure you meet the corners in there. And we're going to give it a nice strong crease, just like that, because we're going to want to be able to see that. We're going to unfold it, and we're going to take one end, I'm going to fold it towards the middle, crease that really well, and turn it around and do the same exact thing. And give that another good crease. So our final big fold is we are going to fold it in half the long way this time. Match those corners up there. And give it one good long crease there. So we're going to fold it in half this way again. And our original fold in the middle there. And you're going to make sure that the crease is on the bottom part. And you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut right to the middle part right there. And snip right there. Perfect. And that's going to be on both sides there, just like that. You're going to unfold, and whew, another fold last time. And we're going to make sure it looks like a little bird's beak. We're going to push those edges in. And this is a little bit tricky, but you're going to take one side and fold it. and then the other side and fold it in. And then that last piece of paper that's hanging out there, we're going to fold that in too. And it might be a little uneven, but that's not a big deal. You're just going to squish it down, make sure everything's folded up nice and well. And there's our little book. Pretty easy, right? Alright, now for this next part is going to be a little bit of drawing and a little bit of writing. And for your drawing, you might want to use markers. You could use colored pencils, crayons. I don't know if you'd want to use paint or not, but if you really want to make it a little bit messy, you can totally use paint. Alright, so for our cover, we're going to want to tell people what this book is about. Just like the title of a book, by maybe your favorite author if you've been reading a little bit. So for mine, I'm going to break out my green marker here, and I'm going to call my book Invasive Species, and you can write it any way you want to. I'm going to write it all kinds of different directions. And then Medway Valley, because that is exactly what we talked about today, right? And then we want to write who this book is by, which is by you. So I'm going to write my name at the bottom here. We'll get that. And then if you want to draw any sort of little critter here, probably something invasive, but if you don't want to, you can always draw something totally different. But I am going to do a little yuck face here. I'm going to draw our outline, and he's going to be making the yuck face. His tongue's going to be sticking out, because we don't want those invasive species around. Now we're going to give him a little bit of a pink tongue. And a yellow face. Just like that. Look at that. Alright, you can add squiggles or stars or whatever you want to add to there. Totally up to you. So for our first plant, I'm going to do garlic mustard. So I'm going to write the name there. And we're going to draw a picture of garlic mustard so we know what it looks like. So, with your green, we're going to draw stems, because garlic mustard is pretty tall, as we saw. And then we know it has heart-shaped leaves. So the easiest way to draw those leaves is to draw 2 bumps like a camel, and then a little triangle right there. And we're going to draw a bunch of them just like that. As they have all sorts of leaves, all the way up and down their stems. And we're going to draw the little stems all over the place. The leaves have veins, so if you want to draw some veins or you just want to color them in, that is okay too. And then what else? These little flowers, they have really tiny white flowers. And one way to draw those are just to draw little petals, kind of like how you draw a daisy. So I'm going to draw a couple of those there. And they don't have to be right connected to the stem like that, because they grow in little clusters, right? So they're all bunched together at the top of the plant. And I'm only drawing 3, but you can draw as many as you like. You can be as detailed or as little detailed as possible. This is all for you guys, so you can show people what you mean when you mean invasive species. Alright, so on this page, I am going to draw facts. And I'm going to write a couple of facts that I really like. So let's see, it smells like garlic. That's how it has its name, garlic mustard, right? And it likes shady and wet soil. And you can write another fact if you want there. Maybe you like that it has heart-shaped leaves. And you can write maybe where it's from originally, where you can find it today. But if you leave a little bit of room here, what's good about a field guide is it lets you have notes. So in this case, I'm going to say where I've seen it. Now, I've seen it in my own backyard. So I am going to put that I saw it very recently in my backyard. And if you guys are on a trail and you see it, You can write what trail you were on, when you saw it, anything like that. Now our next plant that we talked about, and you can write it in any order you want to, is Gout Weed. What a silly name for a plant. Alright. Now Gout Weed has a whole bunch of leaves, so we are going to draw, I'm going to draw 3 stems here. And we're just going to draw a bunch of half triangles all the way down the plant. Because remember how it blocks all the sun out, so that the other plants can't grow. And we're going to color them in green. You can make them the fancy green and white leaves if you want to. That is totally up to you. Maybe your plant has polka dots. Probably not, though. So for the flowers, I'm going to have the middle one blooming. That has a couple of little leaves on it. And for the flowers, you have these little stems that branch off before you get to the little bunches of flowers at the top. So I'm just going to draw a bunch of little white circles. There's so many little white flowers on these. Just like that. And they grow in soil too, just like the garlic mustard. So we're going to draw some soil down there. Now what facts do we want to write? Let's see. I'm going to say just what I said. They grow in clusters of white flowers. And I'm going to put one more. You can decide on a third one if you want. Green or green and white leaves. And maybe you want to put again where they're from or something else that makes them different. Maybe that they grow in big, dense patches so that the sun doesn't get through. And luckily I haven't seen these yet, so I'm just going to leave my scene blank. And then our last one was the little insect. Do you guys remember what that was? Right, that was our emerald ash borer. Now this one's going to be a little tricky because it's not just stems and leaves and flowers. This is a little bug, but we'll walk through it, right? So we're going to start with a little half circle there, and this is his head. Now bugs, they have 3 parts, right? So they have their head, and then their next part is called a thorax. So I'm going to just draw a wiggly line and attach it to the head. And then their abdomen is the last part, and that is a long pointy bit, just like that. And then they also have wings, so we're going to split it down the middle. They have eyes, so we want to make sure this guy has some eyes. They have antennae coming off of their heads. And then insects, they have 6 wiggly legs. Except for spiders, right? They have 8 wiggly legs. And that's okay if you don't have enough room for them. You can see he has his. And since he's that fancy green color, we'll just color him in green. And maybe make sure people see that he's sitting on a tree. I'm just going to draw a bunch of lines here. And again, you can make him look whatever you want to, as long as it's a green little beetle. There we go. And then you write whatever fun facts you want for this guy. Maybe he eats ash trees specifically, right? Maybe that he is teeny tiny. How big did I say he was? He was the size of a penny. There we go. And then you can add in the larva. Eat the inside of trees. And have I seen these? Not yet, and I hope I don't have to see them. But if you have, you can certainly feel free to add that in there. Now we have our last bit at the back here, and you can draw whatever you want. On my finished one here, I drew a great white trillium, so people maybe see why we're trying to prevent these invasive species from growing, because we want to see these flowers and not those flowers, right? So maybe you want to draw that. Maybe you want to draw your favorite critter. So I think for this one, I'm actually going to draw a butterfly. Because butterflies go along with native species too. So there's my body. I'm going to draw some antenna. And then you can draw a backwards B for the wings. And the right ways B for the wings. And I'm going to draw a monarch. So they have these little, I'm using gray, but they have these little black stripes all over them. There we go. That's pretty good. And monarchs, what color are they? They say they're that bright orange color. So we're going to color him in all orange. And you can write down exactly what it is. Right there. And you can draw whatever you want. So there you have it, guys. There is your finished little field guide to invasive species. So you can feel free to share those facts, show off those fancy pictures you did such a good job of drawing, I'm sure. And take that on your walks with you when you go out on a trail. Alright, hopefully we learned a whole lot of new stuff about the different invasive species we can find in the Medway Valley, and a little bit about why we have to keep an eye out for them and make sure that they're not taking over our forests and preventing our native wildflowers from growing. Now, just for warning, don't go eating garlic mustard, even if you're almost sure that's what it is, just to be safe, in case any sort of allergies exist, or it's not actually garlic mustard. I'm not going to go out and eat these things, so just don't do that. And also, unless you're trained to use chemicals, especially in like forested areas, or you really know what you're doing, anything like that, just don't go out with anything you find in a store and just start spraying anything you can find. Because like I said, we don't want to damage the natural wildflowers that are growing here either. So it's best, like I said, just to call in a professional. Now that that's said and done, for the rest of the week, Heather, you'll be able to find her tomorrow at 1 p.m. for another hashtag MOA Live Talk. And Katie will be back with you on Friday at 10 a.m. Yep, for another archaeology Mad Libs. So that sounds like a whole lot of fun, and we really hope to see everybody there. And you all have a nice Wednesday.